Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sprout University podcast. Really excited for this one today. We are joined by Evan, new to the channel. Welcome, my man. Thank you for coming on and looking forward to hearing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, Evan and I met. We met through Jaren, who you guys have seen on the channel for sure. And today we're going to be diving into the importance of meditation over medication. For most of my mental health journey, when I started, I was on medication. I tried all the different benzodiazepines, whatever it might be, the SSRIs, and finally, when I just said, okay, I'm going to start to learn how to be mindful and try to live without it as much as best I can. Surprisingly, things started to go really well. So I think there's a direct correlation between meditation and mental health, staying sane, happy, peaceful. So why don't we just dive right in as always? Evan, tell us like how you started off on this journey, what meditation means to you, etc.
Yeah, so very similar to you. I suffered from anxiety and depression for most of my life due to some childhood factors and environmental things. There was just a bunch of reasons. It could have been hereditary. I'm not really sure, but that was definitely something that I've always struggled with. And just as you said, tried all the different SSRIs, antidepressants, tried all the medications, went that route. Although it does help temporarily, it kind of puts a band-aid on the situation, right?
Right.
So then that kind of, there was still always sort of this underlying pain that I was dealing with. There was always this anxiety, depression. And that's when I started turning to, I started smoking weed when I was about 16. That became a pretty regular thing for me. But still, even with that, I always wanted more. I always wanted something more, just trying to chase more, trying to escape myself, escape the pain. And that's when I started turning to more harder things, prescription pills, so that started around 16 and then all the way until I was 25. I'm not going to get into it too much, but there was a lot of drug use in there. I got really bad with opiates at one point. And wow. Yeah, it was pretty intense. But weed kind of started all of it. I guess it was kind of it wasn't really even about the drugs. It was just about me not being comfortable with myself is what I realize now. And when I was about 26, 27, I guess there was a couple years where I finally was sober. I kind of quit the drugs for the most part. And then when I was about 26 or 27 is when I discovered mindfulness. And yeah, it just absolutely changed everything for me. Somebody lent me a book called The Art of Power by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a monk.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it kind of...
He was a monk. He did pass. So we got to
give
a shout out to Thich. Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty much it. That started this whole holistic journey. And, cool. As you said, I just learned to keep everything very natural. I don't even drink alcohol anymore.
Nice, dude. Hell yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. And this is where we are today. It's been 4 years now.
So. Cool. It's nice to meet a brother. I tell you this. I meet a lot of people that don't smoke, but that don't smoke and drink. It's quite rare. So I always appreciate meeting someone in both of those fields. With your weed, so I really want to dive in a little bit to the weed story because this channel is predominantly about marijuana and quitting marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that journey for you? Like, why did you start smoking? When did you start smoking? And then what was your transition out of it? Just the whole gambit.
I was interested in weed from a very young age. Even before I started smoking it, I would see it. So my dad would just let me watch any movies that I wanted. He was really big into films. So from a young age, I was exposed to a lot of things that kids probably shouldn't be. Like I probably shouldn't have even really known what weed was when I was like 10 or 11,
Okay.
So there was just something that always intrigued me about it. So when I finally got the opportunity with a bunch of neighborhood kids that I probably shouldn't have even been hanging out with, I remember it specifically. I think everybody probably remembers the very first time they got high.
Yeah.
Remember I got high, absolutely loved it.
Nice.
And, that was just it. From then on, I just pretty much was a regular weed user for so I was a regular weed user for a few years, but then what happened was, weed actually started giving me some anxiety and I started getting like these very paranoid highs and it was happening very regularly. So I think that's why I started turning to other drugs because I still wanted to get high, but the weed wasn't making me feel good. So I think that's why I started experimenting with the pills and stuff.
Oh, wow. So you fall in one of two camps. Like either people hit that point and they're like, I got to quit, or they kind of go further into the drug use. So the DARE people were not wrong in a sense. I don't know if you remember the DARE
Of
group.
course, I think about
That
that all the time. I'm like, why didn't like they do that shit for a reason? Like we should probably just listen to them.
I wonder though if they're actually like low key trying to get you hooked. Like they're like they're
Yeah,
like
right.
spies from like a drug company. They're like, okay, get these guys like pumped up for drugs. So I thought it was ironic. 'Cause I'm like, wow, I spent so much time learning about the Dare program, and I'm like total drug addict.
Right.
So just the irony of life. So yeah, I think and a lot of people get to that point where weed stops working. That's what it was for me too. I just couldn't get high. I would get paranoid, anxiety. When did you decide, okay, Evan, you've been smoking weed for so long, you've been doing drugs. When is it, why, I need to quit this, or else my life's going to go to shit.
Yeah, so I think, like I said, when I really got into opiates, everything was just really, that shit ruined my life in a very short amount of time.
Whoa.
And I think I was just so done with. I wasn't really suicidal, but at that point, I just didn't really care anymore. I was just kind of giving up on life. Um, I was still living in my hometown. I was at this point, I was like 24, 25. Everybody else was moving on. They had careers and stuff. And I was still like working in this restaurant, still getting high all the time. Eventually I realized like, enough of this. Like I have to do something different. So I moved to New York City. My dad had actually just moved. He was living in Alabama for many years. He just moved to New York City. And coincidentally, around that time is when I wanted to give up, quit everything, and just leave my hometown and leave it all behind. Moved in with him in his one-bedroom apartment, was sleeping on his couch, and that's where I finally got sober for the most part. And I was still doing maybe party drugs once in a while, but I wasn't using anything consistently. And that's when I kind of
Mhm.
started changing my whole life around. Finally got a real job, and that was it. Drugs were kind of a thing of the past at that point.
Oh, that's awesome. And how old were you when you finally decided to kick the rock?
Yeah, I was probably like, I would say 25, 26.
25. Cool. Cool. Guys, I know a lot of you come to this channel, you're around that age, maybe in your mid 20s, maybe getting in your 30s. So it's never too late to quit. And I think I appreciate you sharing, when you quit. A lot of people, like, they'll come in. I was at 22. I quit at 22 and I thought it was too late. I'm like, oh my God, my life is over. I fucked my brain up. Did you have any of that like fear that, oh my God, I did some real damage to
Yeah.
myself?
I was really scared of that actually. I really did I thought there was some, real physical damage I did. And one point I wanted to make before I forget is that I really do think that you have to, like, sometimes you have to hit this rock bottom. You have to hit this low, and you kind of have to go through this period until you finally realize I just can't fucking do this anymore.
Yeah.
My mom really cared about me, so I had a pretty good support system, which I'm very grateful for. She tried we tried rehab. I just wasn't genuinely ready to give it up at that point.
Okay.
So it's important to know is to just, be patient with yourself. You have to really want it. And it sucks because some people, if you're into the harder drugs, you might not get that opportunity. Unfortunately, it's everything that's happening with fentanyl and everything. It's really disturbing. But I know your channel is mostly people who are into weed. But my advice would be is to please try to wake up, now sooner rather than later, especially you younger guys. You have a whole life ahead of you. I'm so glad that, everything turned out the way it did. So, just remember that it really only gets worse for the most part.
Amen, brother. Amen. That's gonna make a great short.
Mhm.
What? How did? So they say that in recovery groups, just like you said. Like it's recovery is for people that want it, not for those that need it. Obviously, many people need it. What made you want it finally? That's it. Like, I want to do this.
Joel, that's a really good question. It's just something just wakes up inside of you where you just have this realization, almost similar to like when you have like a spiritual awakening. Like it's not something that you can force yourself. It's just something that naturally comes where you just realize like you have to stop. And some people, like I said, I mean, there was a period where I was trying like Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, and there were guys who were just quitting that were like in their 40s and 50s. So it really will just come to you, I guess, when it's supposed to, when it's meant to. My advice would be, if you're struggling with that, finding that reason to quit is to maybe find some sort of higher purpose, or your life purpose, or even some sort of spiritual thing. It doesn't even have to be religion, just something. Just try to find something greater than yourself. And I
Mhm.
really think that if I had found that earlier, that that would have helped me a lot.
Oh man, yeah, I'm so glad you said that, Evan. That's such an important piece of recovery is that higher power, higher purpose, higher mission. I work with people on that in coaching, like how to find thing that's going to motivate you to stay sober, because getting sober to stay sober, like, I'll be frank, is kind of boring. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like,
Exactly.
I don't blame anyone who doesn't want to get sober. Just, oh yeah, I got sober. We really work on like finding, okay, why do you want to do this? Do you have relationship goals, career goals? That, I guess you could say that that is a part of you too. So I like how you're saying find something a little more altruistic, maybe some sort of spiritual path, which is what we're going to dive into more as we continue this talk. Um, what was that for you? What was your higher purpose, higher calling?
Um, okay, so I got into mindfulness, right? And not only like was it just the meditation, it was just the whole like realm of spirituality. It was Buddhism
Mhm.
that I originally became really
Oh,
interested in.
love it.
And I just absolutely loved it. I loved I loved the philosophy of Buddhism. It all made so much sense to me. It really spoke to me. It kind of woke something up inside of me. So at that point, I just knew I was really interested in spirituality and learning about different spiritual teachings, which I never was before. I probably laughed at it before, at an earlier point in life. Um, yeah, so I was doing meditation regularly, learning about different spiritual things, learning about how to do all of this inner work. And then I think after maybe a year or two of doing that, it finally occurred to me like, all right, now I have to teach this to other people, you know?
Mm,
And I think
mhm.
that that was really like what really kept me sober was
Oh, okay.
this is like the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, this kind of stuff is this is I think really think this is my purpose on this
Hell
planet,
yeah.
probably yours too, if you're, running this kind of channel. Um, so I think our life purpose is always going to come back to helping other people in some way, you know.
Yes.
Uh, it might not be so obvious, but
Mm,
it's never going to be something that we just sit in our room doing. Like if your life purpose is art,
yeah.
you have to give that back to the world. You have to design art that's going to help people in some way, maybe inspire them, maybe invoke
Mm,
some sort of emotion in them. It's not going to be you just sitting in your room drawing. So
yeah.
I think you really truly realize what your life purpose is once you start sharing it with the world, or at least
Mm.
realize that you're supposed to share it with the world.
Dude, absolutely, brother. It's again coming back to recovery, and I'll just keep touching on that point.
Mhm.
Service is one of the three pillars of recovery in those groups. I can't say them by name, but you know what they are.
Mhm.
Um, those recovery pillars, and a lot of people with addiction problems, unfortunately, this is not a good or bad thing, as they say in Buddhism. Just is, there's a lot of self-centeredness, and I believe that comes from trauma from the past. Mm, I know for me it was not feeling safe, so I had to go inwards, and therefore I became more, I was always trying to protect myself. And when I got older, that manifested into self-seeking, self-serving, self-centeredness. And so a big thing for me was getting out of that, and service is a great way to do that. Right? I think it keeps a lot of people sober. It sounds like it did for you as well,
Yeah.
because you realize that, okay, I'm not super important as I think I am. Two, you get to experience what it feels like to give back to another person, because let's be honest, like once when you open yourself up to life, it gives you a lot. We got life to begin with. Like that's a pretty amazing thing. So it can start with little things, right? Like in meetings, just picking up, my sponsor anyway. He's like, okay, so start picking up chairs and books after the meeting. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this. It's like, okay, I'll do it.
So
And then it just,
I just want to ask real quick. So you were involved in the NA thing, or what?
I went to basically what you're talking about, but in for marijuana and then alcohol. So the alcohol group.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I I didn't. I wouldn't say I had a huge problem with alcohol. It was like I did because I would get in trouble and stuff, but
Mhm.
marijuana was my main vice. But
Mhm.
because there's only a small amount of people in that marijuana support group, I went to the alcohol one.
Oh, okay.
And my sponsor there also was a marijuana guy, but the group was so small, I had to get recovery elsewhere.
Mhm.
So starting off with little things, right? Picking up chairs, doing books, and then eventually it evolved into being of trying to be of greater service. Uh, I think absolutely, if it wasn't for this channel, who knows if I would have stayed sober. I know though that I tell I can't relapse, or else this channel is kind of a mute point. So it keeps me sober for sure, and it sounds like you did as well. Um, what were some of those other things that kind of motivated you to? So it sounds like service was a big one. This channel, and then what were some of the other things that really kept you going and lit your fire? Like, this is something worth getting sober for.
I think just realizing how good I felt when I was sober, really
Mm,
healing all of that trauma and that depression and anxiety and overcoming that naturally, like I mentioned earlier, like I realized the only reason I was getting high all the time was because I was trying to escape myself from that. So once I just sat
Mhm.
there and, through meditation, different meditation techniques, and really faced all of that, I was like, oh, life is actually so much more enjoyable when you're sober.
Right.
Um, but the reason that I never, like when I was going through the whole drug phase, the reason I never was able to stay sober for a substantial amount of time is because I didn't enjoy it. Like you said, it felt boring because I still had a bunch of
Mhm.
mental issues that I wasn't dealing with. But once I finally
Mhm.
healed those, healing trauma is, I think, is always going to be a big part of recovery. Uh, Once I healed all of that, I realized like life is not that bad. It's not, life is actually really beautiful when you
Yeah.
change your perspective. So
Yep.
I think just generally realizing, I mean, it sounds a little corny, just realizing how great life actually really is, uh,
Ooh, wow, I
kept
love
me
that.
sober. What do you think?
How long did it take you to hit that? That's what I think. What do the people want to know, dude? I'm in the withdrawal. When?
I would say, I mean, I think everybody's biology and it's going to be different for everybody, but I would say after a couple of months of doing a lot of deep inner work,
Mm,
maybe even less than that. I remember when I
cool.
first consistently started meditating every single day, I really noticed an improvement in the way that I felt after maybe 2 weeks.
Oh,
I noticed a little bit of, I was like, there's definitely something here. It wasn't easy. Meditation is really challenging when you first start doing it, but
yep.
gradually, just like going to the gym, you don't notice a difference in the first week or two, but you might feel a little
Yeah.
bit better after a
Uh-huh.
month. You look in the mirror, you see a little bit of a difference. I would say it's very similar to that. So
Oh, yeah. Great analogy. You hear
yeah.
that, guys? 2 months. You work hard. Can just take a couple months. No excuses. Yeah, I think I found about it at the 2 month mark. I was ready to move on with my life and stuff. And then Buddhism, I want to touch a little bit on that. I think that's really cool. You got into it. I had that same draw to Buddhism. I love that it talks about how you can find happiness today, not when you're dead, which is what my Christian upbringing kind of told me. Like, when
Right.
you die, you'll go to heaven, and then you'll be happy. I'm like, I want heaven now. I'm an addict. I
Exactly.
want it now. What else about Buddhism drew to you? Just give me
The thing
truths.
that woke me up the most with Buddhism is because most of my problems dealing with depression and anxiety. Depression, your head is mostly stuck in the past, and anxiety, your head is mostly stuck in the future, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started learning about Buddhism and overall like what Buddha really taught was that you can only ever be happy in the present moment. The past and
Wow.
the future are just thoughts in your mind, and
Ooh.
you can literally just change your perception and be happy right now. You do this by practicing gratitude, by just enjoying the moment. Uh, and this is for a lot of you guys who might not be familiar with this, then this might sound like nonsense. You might not understand, but I do think once you start meditating regularly, you'll start to see because our brain is so conditioned to being to
Mhm.
constantly ruminating about the past or to constantly fantasizing or worrying about the future. But when you really sit down, and this is what mindfulness meditation does, or other like all of the meditation practices, it literally trains your brain. It literally rewires your brain to just be in the present moment. And I think that that's that was the main thing with Buddhism that I realized like, wow, they're right. Everything they preach is right. Yeah, I mean, I also have a lot of gripes with Christianity as well. I grew up going to Catholic school. It's just not for me personally. I really like Eastern philosophies. I think they're really inspiring, really amazing. So yeah, I had that same experience.
You were like my white brother. Seriously,
Yeah,
my
I
white
know. I
brother.
feel like we're so like, everything you're saying. I'm like, wow, I had that. I think the same thing.
Right? You just got the beard, and but besides that, we got the white shirts.
You
So
got the
it's
white
funny that
shirt,
you.
your hair, like
Yeah, yeah. It is funny that you're wearing your shirt says Bong on it. I know it's Billabong, which is like a skater brand, but
it is
I
kind
just
of
got a kick
ironic,
out of that.
right?
I was like, perfect. We just got to paint it green now. Um, yeah, dude. Eckhart Tolle says that he was the first guy I got into, and he's
Me
just
too.
you never. Yeah.
I read well, there was the book by Thich Nhat Hanh, but then after that I read A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, nice,
And
nice.
that
Okay.
completely like that is what really I completely forgot that. And sometimes it's hard to remember like the sequence of events. That was the book
Mhm.
that literally like just opened everything for me.
Bro, amen, dude. That is what a book, dude. Guys, check that book out if you want to just trip yourself out and find a new reality, a new earth. Power Now was the first one I got into,
Most
and
people
I
start
found
with that one.
yeah, I found way more though benefit from a new earth once I found that eventually. I found power in the now. I took it too literally because I was like they said, like time. He says time doesn't exist; it's an illusion, which is true, right? It's all a construct in our head because the only thing that exists is the present moment. So I took that literally, and just
Yeah.
stop like showing up for things and people like on time. They'd be like, "Dude, you're so fucking late all the time." I'm like, "Dude, there's no time. I can't be late." Like, bro,
I
you got
think
to be on time. Come on.
I think when you go through that phase of spirituality, whatever it is you get into, you will take a lot of it very literally, but you still
Mm,
need to live your life practically. It's not, you're supposed to sort of just
okay.
apply it to your life. But I did the same exact thing, and I would go around preaching
Yeah.
all this shit, like time doesn't exist. It's not meant to be taken like so literally, but it really doesn't if you think about it. I mean, what is time? It's just something we invented as humans. I mean,
God, that's trippy. Yeah,
yeah,
it doesn't fucking exist. Amen. Yeah, it's hard not to want to share it with everyone. Like, God, I found all this like, this new stuff. Oh, God, pun intended. Like, everyone, I found all this new like stuff. I remember just telling my parents, and they just be like, "All right, well, our son's gone off the rocker." I'm like, exactly. That's the point. I've woken up, and they're like, I would try to get people to hop on board, and they'd just be not about it. So that's I think a good piece of wisdom there. I've been like, yeah, I know that that wasn't your intention with that statement, but do your best to keep it to yourself and let the results show as you become a better person, and then people will start to ask organically, like, dude, like, I see a lot of change in you. What is it? When you just start
100%.
going 100%, because you just start going, yo, guys, like, look at this, you got to change because I did. People are gonna be like, fuck off. So,
It's the type of stuff that if people aren't ready for it, it's not going to make sense to them. Like I remember
mhm.
I read A New Earth and I was like, this is so amazing. And my mom bought it and she was like, it just sounds like nonsense. It sounds like mumbo jumbo. I just don't understand it. If you're just not there to the point where you're going to understand it, like you're just not ready to. And he even says that in the
Yeah.
book, like just put the book
Mhm.
down if it doesn't make sense to you. But my advice would be just keep an open mind to things.
Sure.
Like, there's certain books that I had to try to read a couple of different times before it finally clicked for me. So,
Mhm.
even if this doesn't, even if what we're talking about for you guys watching doesn't sound like it makes sense to you, just sort of keep an open mind to it is what I would suggest. And
Yes.
one day you might realize it, and then you'll remember that you listened to this podcast and be like, oh, now I see what they were talking about.
Yeah, those two ex-stoner guys aren't fucking nuts. Like, yeah,
Exactly.
right, absolutely. And I recommend checking out the Audible version of that book. That's how I found it because he narrates it, so you'll get to hear, and his voice is so like he's so present that like his
Yeah.
voice transmutes that presence. Like I think if I would have read it from the book, I would have been like it would have been in my own like thoughts. So
Mhm.
so I think it would have been a little lost, but
Yeah.
um so yeah, I mean, dude, I appreciate you sharing your story and kind of filling us in on your backstory, where you came from, how you got to this point. Now I want to open the floor up to you to just give us, everything love, and think about meditation and kind of enlighten us on what it means to you.
I think meditation is what it means to actually be alive. When
Mm,
you're meditating, you are just experiencing reality. I mean, we put this label on it as meditation and we think of it as this practice that we have to do every day. I got to sit down. It's on my list. I got to sit down and I have to meditate for 20 minutes. I think meditation is so much more profound than that. I think you're literally experiencing reality as it is. You're not thinking about anything. You're allowing all of motions, all feelings. You're allowing everything to just be as present as it possibly can. I think it's so much more than just a practice or a technique. I think it's what it means to actually live and be alive. And I'm curious to hear what you think as well.
wow, I love that perspective, man. And it may I agree with you. I never thought about it in those words, but as it's evolved for me as well. That's I think what it's turned into. It started off, I think, as most just learning like sitting there, right? Just okay, I'm just gonna sit. And I thankfully one of the big things I learned was it's not about not having thoughts. I understand that pretty quickly, so that helped a lot because I think I would have gone crazy. Because a lot
Yeah.
of folks they start and they're like, "Yo, I need to like not think, and if I am thinking, I failed." No, 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 no. Like if that is your barometer, it's gonna suck. One of the groups I went to, it was actually a Buddhist recovery group through the
Oh, is it
Shambhala tradition.
refuge recovery?
Oh, that one's really good too with Noah Levine,
Yeah.
who actually got well. It's called Heart of Recovery with the different Buddhist tradition, and unfortunately, both of them got got shut down. Not the groups, but the leaders. So Noah Levine, and then the guy who was running the Shambhala group. He's like a guy from Asia for let's just say doing inappropriate things with students.
I heard that.
So yep. Ironic, right? The most
Mhm.
spiritual practice. They're teaching about like sexual purity, and then they're going off and doing creepy things. So that was a huge ordeal, and that's when I stopped going to that group.
You know what's
But
funny? I want to say something real quick. Sorry to interrupt you.
please, please.
The guy who originally lent me the book, The Art of Power, the one by Thich Nhat Hanh, the
Uh-huh.
one that like really put me on this whole path. He later actually got. He was a coworker of mine who later got fired for sexual harassment. I
Talk
always
about
laugh
these
at
spiritual leaders,
it.
right?
But it goes to show you that you could still fuck up even if you are a spiritual person. It doesn't, we still make mistakes. I knew him. I don't think his actions were necessarily ill intentioned. It was just like
Oh, okay.
it was kind of
One of
weird.
those. Yeah,
But anyway, I just wanted to say that real quick that I just
sure.
thought that was
It's ironic. And those guys that were doing it, they were doing it intentionally though. So it was funny
oh,
because before every meeting, we would have a prayer like, "Hey, we're here to practice, presence, sexual purity." They're just like going around like, it's, all right, guys, it's kind of weird, but full circle here. They talked about how the monks, the Buddhist priests, the nuns, all these people that just live for meditation, they can only
mhm,
sit still for a couple of minutes before their mind starts to wander. So as
mhm.
soon as I heard that, I'm like, all right, like I don't need to go for 15 minutes without thinking. That is impractical. So I'm just gonna sit and just breathe and learn how to connect with my breath. So that's how I started, just connecting with the breathing. Great place to start, great place to anchor. I can still
Mhm.
today anchor to that breath if I want to, which has really helped me in a lot of situations. And then it's evolved, just like you said, to where meditation is an everyday thing. Like you said, like we're always meditating.
Mhm.
And that transition for me came when I started doing eyes open meditation. So I used to do eyes closed and just connect to the
Mhm.
breathing. And eventually I'm like, okay, I'm really peaceful when I close my eyes. But if I'm driving down the freeway and someone's pissing me off, I can't close my eyes. Like I need to learn how to bring this into like the stimulus of the world.
Right.
So what kind of meditation do you do? Transcendental? What's your practice like, and how has it evolved?
Mindfulness of the breath was the most important. That was the foundational one, and that's the one that I recommend everybody get started on because it's very simple. And I'll actually be teaching a free 30-minute meditation class at the end of April, which we'll give you more
Oh,
information on.
awesome.
But if you're interested in just an introductory way, it's going to be very simple. You can just listen in. I would say that sort of that, like you said, the mindfulness, like just following the flow of your breath, like in, out, and just doing that for even just 5 to 10 minutes a day, I think you'll see a huge improvement. There are so many different meditation techniques. There's, you can put your hand on your heart and just focus your awareness on all of your heart, on just listen, like feeling your heartbeat. You can focus your attention on a candle flame. You can focus, you can do something like a letting go meditation where you just focus on the emotions and the sensations in your body and let all of them go. You can do something like self-inquiry, whereas which you turn all of your attention in. I mean, I've learned so many over the years. My advice is to find the one that makes the sense for you and keep it simple. Like you said, it's not about, I got this wrong too. I was like, I have to stop thinking. You don't want to try to control your thoughts. You don't want to try to stop thinking. You just want to anchor your awareness to the moment, let the thoughts come. The idea is to just not engage with them. Um, you want to just really try to stay focused on some sort of like just anchor it to some sort of thing that's only happening in real time. That is the best advice. If you're very new to this, I would recommend just practice even just sitting down for 5 to 10 minutes without phones or anything, like just sitting down in complete silence. Don't even worry about meditating. Just I guarantee you won't even be able to do that if you've never tried it before. Like just sitting down
Totally.
alone in a room and just doing nothing, just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. Even that's going to be like you're going to start twitching. You're going to want to get up. Just remember, like it's a very small progression, and you need to take baby steps. We're not, it's easy for monks who live up, in a quiet ashram or a monastery in the mountains to sit and meditate all day. Living out here in the West, it's going to be more difficult for us to kind of train our brain to be in that present state.
That's a very important point. It's you can't compare with guys that just live in peace and quiet all the day.
Right.
A lot of people have kids. A lot of people may have crazy jobs. You live in big
Exactly.
cities, so it's a different beast. And I think it's still important, though, like you said, not to give up and to push. To work on it. It takes years. I've been working on it, coming up on 8 years now. So that was when I had my first meditation. So it is and I still got to work on it every single day. If I stop working on it, it I start to get a little, loopy. Maybe this is a good, I think, a podcast for me as well to maybe get into more of a formal practice. I've gotten
Mm.
the habit of waking up, not being on my phone right away, maybe just sitting, kind of just breathing. I haven't done like a legit like I'm gonna set a timer and then go into whatever lotus position for X amount of time. Just because I think I've incorporated it into my life so much,
Right.
it might be helpful to try to dive back into that a little bit. So I thank you for that. And I want to know too, this is I think a really juicy question here. When you first started to experience presence, did it
Mhm.
freak you out a little bit? Were you like, oh, this is a lot?
It I don't know if it necessarily freaked me out. I think I understand what you're asking, but it definitely is something that I never experienced before when you kinda have, like, the spiritual awakening, you can call it, which is not a crazy, like, thing where God comes down and, shines a light on you. It's just as simple as realizing, like, "Oh, like, everything is just a thought in my mind." All of
Mhm.
my problems, all of my anxiety, everything that I ever dealt with was really just thoughts. And I think when you
Mhm.
have this realization, it kind of brings you this sense of peace. And I also think, to answer your question earlier, I also think that was one of the things that motivated me to keep going with everything. Like, you just realize that most of our problems are created in our own mind.
Mhm.
To truly experience like this state of presence, I think that happens when you can get into a very, very deep state of meditation, which happens after practicing, for hours. Some people get it early on. Some people it takes years. I mean, it'd be different for everybody. I wouldn't say I've had a couple of very interesting experiences while meditating, nothing too crazy, but just realizations, that are kind of hard for me to verbally explain in words. It's something that you kind of just feel, and it's pretty miraculous. It's pretty great. And I think that's just the human mind's way of evolving to a sort of a
Mhm.
next level. Um, so yeah, what about you? Like, what would be your idea of presence? Have you experienced anything interesting, or did it freak you out?
It did freak me out. I was like, because I was so used to so much stimulus. I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, this is, like, too quiet." Like, "Oh my god."
Right.
And then I think what maybe can be difficult for a lot of folks is that they are you have to face everything that you're feeling and your actual data, your experience. And I was not in tune with my emotions, so I had a lot of emotions that were just not pleasant,
Mhm.
and I think that can be what deters people as well. Now, the irony is that the more present you get, the less those emotional states are present. But if you're going through withdrawal, if you're having life situations, if you have trauma, that is going to be there, and the meditation actually might shine a light on it.
Exactly.
So meditation, I think it's very important to be careful with meditation too. Like, don't obviously do it, but just know, I think it would be wrong for us to say that some stuff might come up that might freak you out
Mhm.
a little bit. And so I think it's very important then to have like either a coach or a therapist that you can talk over those things with to face. Because if you're, sitting in the car and then you're like, oh my God, this happened when I was 8, you're just like, fuck, that can be dangerous, potentially to those around you. So finding a safe space, I guess, that's a little, cliche word at this point, but a legitimate, it's a place where you can feel comfortable enough to process what you're going through is important. I'd say presence to me now is it's just freedom from suffering. It's freedom from the mind saying this isn't right or that isn't right. The freedom from thinking that, oh, made this mistake in the past, or oh, I got this to deal with in the future. It's just peace. It's really just peace.
Yeah, that's
I
beautiful.
love
I agree 100%. Um, there was something I wanted to say about your last point, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, it's not to say that all of your problems. What I wanted to say was a lot of trauma may surface when you meditate. A lot of repressed memories may pop up, And you really have to relax yourself. Something that's really important with meditation is to make sure that you're always keeping your body very relaxed. We store a lot of trauma, a lot of emotions in our physical body. A really good book that goes into depth about this is called Letting Go: The Pathway of Surrender. Highly recommend it. That book is another one that changed my life. And so just be mindful of that, be aware of that. And like Joel said, I think therapy is great. A lot of men have an issue with it. I've saw a therapist. It was I did sort of like an outpatient addiction thing at one point.
Mhm.
So what happened was, I won't get into this too much, but basically I was clean for a really long time. I forgot to mention this to you. I was
Okay.
clean for a really long time. And then about 3-ish years ago, maybe 2, 3 years ago, I had to get my wisdom teeth removed and they prescribed me
Okay.
opiates and I kind of
Uh,
slipped and I kind of had
okay.
a little bit of a slip up, which happens. It's normal when you're in recovery. So a friend of mine got really worried, and she tried to get me into sort of this outpatient drug thing. It was all online. It was
Okay.
all like Zoom sessions. So it was weekly therapy appointments, and then also it was like group stuff. It was based in California. I actually really liked it. I got a lot of value from it. I got a lot of value from the therapist. Things like that will work if you really truly want them to, and I did. So anyway, I do think it's always good to have somebody to talk to. Uh, somebody who's not going to judge you, somebody who works in the field of therapy, coaching, mentor, whatever it is to you, even maybe just a really trusted friend that you have good conversations with. Uh, I highly recommend that because stuff will come up, but it has to come up for you to really truly release it. Um, so I just wanted to share that.
Thanks, brother. That's a very important point. Yes. And be careful too. I think with therapy and stuff, I tell people this when I start coaching them that, hey, I want you to come in and come out as fast as possible, right? I don't
Mhm.
want to, a lot of therapists, unfortunately, it, how to say it, it becomes their identity. So
Right.
they, it can be almost codependent where you come to them. What's dangerous about therapy, I think, is that you come to them, you talk for an hour, you go into some of the deepest stuff you've probably ever faced, and then they're like, all right, see you next week. I don't like that model. And that's maybe one of the reasons I stopped therapy as well. When I
Mhm.
coach, I give people like I say, hey, you can text me anytime throughout the day. I'll send you a voice note as soon as I can. Like I want to be in communication with you as much as possible so you can process these things because we will be touching on some deep stuff. Uh, my therapy evolved when I finally started seeing therapists that were like, "Hey, man, yep, our treatment's going to be 3 months, and then we're going to send you on." And I'm like, "What the fuck, like, dude?" Like, I felt
Right.
like abandonment, a lot of
Yeah.
abandonment, and now I see now it was their way of saying, "Okay, we like, I don't want you dependent on me." So I really actually appreciate that now that I'm further along.
There has to
So
be a
just be careful.
boundary.
It has to be a boundary. Yep. And a therapist that doesn't have a good boundary is a dangerous therapist. So be
Exactly.
very careful with who you find. I find that women can be a little content to more fall into that category of, wanting to be with you for a long time.
Mm.
And that can be, and I found the men that I worked with are kind of like, all right, bro, let's like, let's get you going. So I don't know if that's just a general thing. Maybe it's just what my experience was. One of the therapists I had, she went through some stuff while we were working together. And at one point, I'm like, hey, I need to move on to this other therapy. It was OCD therapy. So whether
Mm.
OCD exists or not, I don't know, but I need to go and get treatment for that for a couple years. And
Right.
she's like, no, I don't think you have it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I do. Like all my good friends tell me I do. I know I do. And she's like, no, I think you should stay with me. And that was like, I got a weird feeling. So
Yeah.
that was an example of her. She became maybe a little too attached as well. Shout out to you if you watch this. You were a cool person. Um, so yeah. Anyway, what's up, T Smash, brother from another mother? Good to see you, brother. And he's been on the streams quite often, so it's good to see you. And yeah, so we're touching on some of the fears. I think the spiritual awakening part, like we just touched on the deep stuff. So there's a silver lining to this, and you get to have spiritual awakenings. I'm not gonna lie, man. I think I'm addicted to spiritual awakenings. They're amazing. Just those insights of like, oh my god, like it
Exactly.
really is that. Like, and they happen as you're meditating. They'll happen throughout your day. Like it doesn't happen just during meditation, but maybe like you're doing other stuff, and it'll just hit
Mhm.
like a bolt of lightning. You're just like, oh, that's why. That's why I
Right.
behave like this. Or wow, you get to. So
It really
what
is.
is that like to you? Yeah.
The way you said it, it's really a spiritual awakening is just an insight. It's, I can't stress that enough. It's not necessarily going to be, although, certain sages and people who have been, you do like really intense spiritual practices might have
Mhm.
very crazy sort of godlike experiences. But for the most part, for us guys watching this, average people in the Western world, it's mostly going to just be these sort of little insights where you start realizing things about yourself, about your past, about the nature of reality. And it's going to be unique for everybody. It's going to look different for everybody. So mine, like my greatest insight was just that reality is only ever happening right here and now. Our opinions, our judgments, our beliefs, our whole life story is just thoughts in our mind, literally. The present moment
Mhm.
is truly all that exists. And this is a hard thing to kind of wrap your head around. And it's kind of a scary thing for a lot of people to wrap their head around. Um,
Yeah.
but that to me, I mean, yeah, a spiritual awakening, it's kind of thrown around a lot, but I think overall it's a very personal thing. And I just think
Mhm.
it'll look different for every person.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's gonna, yeah, hit everybody a little different. It'll be for different things. A lot of mine was about the past and how I behave. So a lot of my behavior I did not like when I got into recovery, and I could start to be aware of how I was acting and behaving.
Right.
And a lot of the insights were like, okay, this is why I do this. Like, it's not my fault. It's my responsibility to behave differently. But I'm not like a bad person for having acted like this. And that was kind of my like, okay, I'm a good person. Or whether good or bad exists, I'm not a bad person anyway.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it gave me a lot of freedom.
I think
Um,
with that too, you just realize like we're really just a product of our conditioning and the way that we grew up. That was a huge one for me. That's why I got into a lot of like inner child work, and
oh
psychology
yeah.
played a huge part. Um, you just realize that like the way that you are, like you said, it's not really your fault. It's just you're just reacting to the experiences you've been through. And you really just kind of however your parents or whoever raised you, it's really like whatever they did is how you're going to turn out. And
Mhm.
it's your responsibility to take accountability and say like, I really don't like that. My parents told me it's okay that I can steal from the grocery store growing up, or whatever trauma they or whatever thing they might have passed on to you. You kind of have to take responsibility with that, which is something a lot of people won't do because they just don't have the
Yeah.
awareness to. um, but once you wake up from that, it's actually not that hard to change. Like I'm a completely different person than who I was 5, 10 years ago. You
Mm.
just have to really shine awareness on it and just notice every time that it happens. Whatever your thing could be. It could be something as simple as when somebody talks to me, I can't look them in the eyes. Or it could
Uh-huh.
be something extreme like I, use women for sex. Some whatever the behavior is, you just have to start noticing it and say, this is something that I do. I really want this to change. Notice when you want to do it, notice when you are doing it, and it'll kind of naturally cure itself if you take full accountability for it.
Oh, brother. I just had a little insight there when you were sharing. So thank you. Thank you. I'll share with you after the show. But absolutely, dude, 100 shining that a light of awareness. I think that's a great way to sum it up. You just become aware, and then as you're on this path too, and you start to experience joy and freedom, you're like, okay, this behavior inhibits me feeling joy and freedom. So
Exactly.
I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get rid of it.
Right.
I would love, like, in a alternate reality, to just like meet like each other like 10 years ago. Just like if we could just snap our fingers just for like 5 minutes, to see if we like what we were
Like,
like.
what would we even get along back then? Would we look, you know what I mean? It would be interesting to see.
Yeah. I mean, we would be like, fuck this guy. Oh, fuck this guy. We just start like fighting. So cool, man. So we are entering the last third of our show. And what I'm very curious to get your perspective on is, how do you incorporate mindfulness and meditation and presence into two things? One, relationships, when you're actually engaging with a human being, and then two, on social media.
This beautiful, beautiful question. So let me start with relationships. It's very easy for us to just like I can just sit in my room all day and be alone and meditate and feel great. You're really going to be tested when you get out into the world and have to start interacting with other people. So when I
Hmm.
first got into meditation, it was coincidentally when we first had that COVID lockdown, the first one where we all had to stay inside. I had just moved into this one bedroom apartment by myself. So I was working remotely at the time. So I was basically just in here all day. like meditating and reading spiritual books. I did that for however
Sweet.
long the lockdown was, like a couple of months or whatever. And then I was like, wow, I feel great. I'm so, my whole life has changed. But then when I actually had to like go back to work, I had to start interacting with people more. I was kind of going down, I was in sort of a lone wolf path during that time when I was in here. But then I had to go back out into the world. And then I was like, okay, people are really gonna test you. Romantic
Mm,
relationships, your parents, your family, they're really gonna trigger a lot of trauma in you, and it can sometimes pull you
mhm,
back down to your old patterns and your own ways of thinking. So you have to be very careful of this. Understand that it's completely normal, it's completely natural, but you have to. I can't really say how to maintain that presence and awareness. It's something that I think you have to kind of find on your own. But I do think
mhm.
the more that you meditate daily by yourself, it'll kind of roll over into your everyday life.
Mm.
And then
Well,
social media, um, yeah, that's a
I
tough one.
while you think of that one, do want to touch on the relationship one because a lot of good points there.
Okay.
Can relate to that 200%, dude. Man, like relationships. Eckhart Tolle talked about it. He talked about how, the story of the monk who spent years meditating in, the ashrams of, the Himalayas or wherever. And
Mhm.
he came back to, planet Earth and he went to the grocery store and or it was like the DMV or something. He had to get his license. He was there for like 4 hours. He's like, I had not been that mad in like so many years. And it
Right.
was just like in that moment I realized, oh shit, being somewhere where I can practice meditation and spirituality means nothing if I can't do it in the real world. And like I'm being tested. So just like you said, I had been practicing meditation. I was kind of like you. I went to my hermit phase, as they call it. You
Mhm.
become a little bit of a recluse.
Yeah.
Pretty normal. Mine lasted probably a little too long. I did it for probably like 6 years, and then once I started dating, that's when it was like, oh fuck, like I thought I so grounded and present and like aware of myself, and I just hadn't touched on that part of myself yet. So as soon as I
Right.
started talking to women, I was like, oh, why do I feel like a little boy when I'm meditating? I feel like a powerful leader or whatever. I don't know, whatever ego thing my mind came up with at the time. But I was like, I'm the guy. And then all of a sudden it's like, dude, like I can't even like look this girl in the eye. I'm so nervous. What is up with that? So you're 100% right, man.
The thing you want to
Relationships will push you.
It's easy. I think Jim Carrey actually had a quote like loneliness gets addictive because you see how
Mm,
peaceful it is or something like that. But you want to be careful because I made this mistake too. I was like, oh, I'm just going to become like a spiritual sage and just be alone for the rest of my life because
yeah.
I don't want to deal with, that trauma and dealing with those people and the stuff that triggers me. We want to be very careful not to fall into that trap. That hermit
Yeah.
phase is good for a period of time, but it's not sustainable. You can't do that for the rest of your life. Um,
Hmm.
you gotta be okay with putting yourself in those situations. Be careful about who you put into your life. You don't want to just be ha- welcome anybody who you meet. You still want to
Right.
choose your friends and partners wisely, but you don't want to fall into that trap of just being alone all the time.
Yeah. I love how you said that loneliness can be addicting. And Jim Carrey, I think, went through a phase of that where he became too spiritual and he
Yeah,
started to become a hermit. He got the long, like hippie hair and stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Loneliness can be addicting, man, and because you don't have to face those insecurities about yourself, the ways you show up in
Exactly.
relationships that people don't like. And every day I'm tested on that for sure. There's things I do today that I think annoy people, and I'm just like, dang, like, why am I doing that? And I know the more I keep practicing and facing it, it's gonna get better. I'll share with
Yeah.
you guys listening right now one of this, so like we're not just talking smoke. Like we're going through this. Well, I'm going through this anyway. I can't speak for Evan.
No, I am too.
I,
I still struggle
you're
all the time. I'm still, I still struggle to maintain a consistent meditation routine. I still struggle with my own insecurities. It doesn't just disappear,
mm,
especially at our
oh,
young age. It's a lifelong, it's a journey. It's a long process, but
I appreciate you sharing that. What are you like? You're 30, 29, 30,
32.
32. Okay,
What
cool.
about you?
29, 29.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're about
So
the same. Yeah.
yeah, you'd
More or
be
less.
I always bring it back to like high school. So you would have been a junior when I was
When
a
you was a
freshman
freshman,
or a
maybe,
senior.
yeah.
Yeah.
Something like
So
that.
I was like, yeah, yeah.
Where did you grow up, if you don't mind me asking? What state in America?
Freaking Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin. Okay. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I was not meant for Wisconsin. I can tell you that. What about yourself?
I've lived mostly over here in New Jersey, New York.
Ah, okay. You're
My life,
Jersey
yeah.
boy.
Yeah.
Nice. Imagine, yeah, it's a different beast over there. I can imagine with
You never been?
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I've never been to the West Coast. I'm actually planning my first trip to Washington State in May.
Oh, cool.
So I don't know what it's like over there, but I mean, it's probably
Yeah.
not that drastically different. But
Did Jaron encourage you to go to Washington? Because that's where he's
no,
from.
no,
No.
yeah, I remember
Okay.
we talked about that a bit. No, I just
Yeah.
always wanted to. I always wanted to go to Olympic National Park. It's like a really big national
Ah,
park
cool.
in Washington. So
Yeah.
I'm actually going there alone. I like to take solo trips once in a
Sweet.
while to just be by
That's
myself,
awesome.
and which I encourage you guys to. I encourage you if you're scared of loneliness, if you feel lonely, I encourage you to face it head on. You know, trying
Mhm.
to invite more people in your life isn't necessarily going to cure it. I encourage you to get comfortable with the loneliness, and you know
Yes.
that
Yes.
might look different for
And take Evan's advice and make sure you're not becoming addicted to it. So got to
yeah,
have that balance for
right,
sure.
right, exactly. There has to be a balance there, but
Yeah. So like coming back to that the point of like yeah we're working through this, we're going through this, we're facing stuff. I'll share one with you guys. I'm facing dating more attractive women that are higher on my like I guess attractive scale,
mm,
and I'm still struggling with where I can't see them the same way as I see someone I'm not as attracted to. Like that same, just like they're a person. Like I still kind of put them on a pedestal. And I know I'm getting through it because I'm actually starting to have to date these women. So
mm.
and but it's like freaking me out a little bit. Like I almost feel like dissociated at times. I'm like, I'm on this date with like, I don't know, like like a porn star woman or whatever. I'm just like, how like what is this happening? So like did an approach last night. We talk about dating a little bit, and I know you're involved. You understand the
Mhm.
whole red pill sphere and stuff. Yeah, I did this approach yesterday. It was like a cookie place. Like, just she was just working there. I'm like, man, she's cute, but I was like nervous at the time. I was like in my head about some things.
Was
Had a
she
date
Mexican?
earlier that, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
little Latina, and I walked away. I walked away and like went like 4 blocks the other way because I was going somewhere. And I'm like, fuck. Like, the whole time I was like, dude, you should do it. You should do it. So I just doubled back and had a great connection, great vibe, like very receptive. And then this morning, this is the first time this has happened. Usually I'm the one to reach out. Like, I'll get her Instagram and then I follow her or whatever. I have her follow me. This is a little tip, guys. I have her follow me off her phone and then I send myself a message. So it's like, it showed, but this case, I actually didn't do it. I just followed myself off her phone. And then this morning, I'm like, okay, should I reach out to her? Like, this is where I was struggling. I'm like, okay, she's hot, so she probably gets a lot of guys that reach out to her. So I should wait 2 days. Man, maybe that's like too long, and she'll like lose interest. If it was another girl like that, I wasn't like super keen on right away, I'd have probably texted her like in the first hour or whatever. But I'm like,
Mhm.
in my head about it, and then she actually messages me. I'm like, holy shit, like let's
Yeah.
go. Uh, and then like I'm in my head like, okay, she's like a different person, kind of person, so I got to say something different than what I usually say, and it's just exhausting. So I'm going with what I usually say anyway. But the point is that like I'm becoming more aware of that I can date these better looking women, but it's going to bring up insecurities. It's going to bring up doubts. It's going to bring up things that I felt as a kid and a teenager that I've kind of avoided, and so it's painful. It's even though it's like, the outcome's going to be fantastic, going through it can be tough. Oh, do you experience
Dating
that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way, man. I'm 32, still have the same types of issues with like, do I text? Do I not text? I'm way more confident than I ever was. I also went through the cold approaching phase, which I highly recommend.
Got it.
I feel like there's a negative connotation against cold approach, but I recommend all men learn how to just start conversations with anybody out in public, especially attractive women, even if it's something simple like a compliment. I highly recommend it. It's one of the most freeing fucking things that you can do as a male. I cannot stress it enough. Um, Most of them won't probably go anywhere, but that's not why you should be doing it. You should just be doing it for your own self-esteem, your own confidence, just to see that you can do it, and it will make you a way better conversationalist. Just wanted to share that real quick.
Thanks, Evan. I gotta touch on that now. You opened a
Go
can of
ahead.
worms. Absolutely, guys. I I was blessed with Tinder not working for me because I think being Asian, being in the US, um, so I had to go to the streets, and it's been the biggest blessing in disguise I could have ever asked for, because it gives you so many people are so afraid to talk to people, so you automatically get, it helps with business, it helps with um even simple things like if you're at the doctor's office and you just got to ask the nurse something. Like I remember I used to be, I don't want to ask her something. I don't want to bother. Yeah, I used to, hey, yo, I mean, I got a question. So and the people you're going to meet are amazing. I find the relationships that do develop from cold approach too are a lot deeper because
Mhm.
it's a better story than, oh, I met this guy on an app. It's like
Oh,
I
yeah.
was doing my thing. I was walking, I was going to the park, and all of a sudden this guy just came out of nowhere, and I was like, "Who the hell is this?" A lot of girls have never been approached in public too, so it's like you're going to be that first like experience. Uh, so I would really recommend getting to it. I also coach on that as well. Sometimes the people I work with in recovery, we just end up, they get sober and they're like, okay, I want to date. So we just kind of pivot into that. So one of the guys is working on that right now that I'm working with, and you get to, and the best part is you get to go up to the girls of your dreams, and you don't have to like, you can just see her and you can be like, yes, like if I could snap my fingers right now, we'd be together. Not in the white-eyed sense, but I would date you. I'm gonna go see if this works, and in 30 seconds, you can know if this something's gonna potentially manifest from it.
You'll get good at, I've gotten good at, you'll know literally, like you said, within 20, 30 seconds if she's interested or not. And if she's not,
Exactly.
get the fuck out of there. But you'll
Yep.
know because you'll seem engaged in the conversation. She'll be asking questions. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
I remember the very first time I did my first real one. Uh, I was at the park, saw this girl sitting down on her laptop. Just while I finally was like, just so sick of making excuses for myself why I couldn't do it. I was like, fuck it, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do it. Went right over to her, started the conversation. She wasn't interested at all.
Mm.
And at the end of the conversation, I was like, yeah, we should go out sometime. And she was like, no, I can't. I was like, all right, we'll see you later. I didn't even give a fuck because I was just so relieved that I did it. I remember calling my
Yes.
friend and just being like, one of my other dating coach friends, and just laughing. I'm like, I can't believe that's what I was so scared of my entire life. Like, you just realize how fucking silly it is. It's all in your mind. It's literally just fear only exists in the head.
Oh, God, bring it back to spirituality and meditation, bro. That's what's up. Eckhart Tolle even recommends that. He's like, I actually watched one of his shows because I was like, am I doing too much approaching? I'll share with you guys. I've done about 1,000 approaches right now. I'm seeing probably maybe like 5, 6 girls. So that just says like how much you're going to get rejected. The fact that look at the percentage, 5 out of 1,000. That's what 0.00 whatever percent.
Yeah.
That's okay. Like, because it's gonna all be worth it. That's a promise. And Eckhart Tolle, like a guy comes on to one of his talks because check out his YouTube channel. It's really
Yeah.
powerful. And the guy's like, "Hey man, like I feel creepy around girls." Basically, was what he was saying. And Eckhart Tolle said he suggested to go out in a busy place with a lot of beautiful women and just sit there and look at them. And I was like, dude, if
I love
Eckhart
him.
Tolle goes,
He's
yeah,
so
right.
down to earth about, like, I'm not even surprised that he said that. He keeps it so real, you know?
So real. And he's spiritually based as fuck. But the fact that if Eckhart Tolle gives you permission to go talk to girls, there's no excuse.
There's no excuse. Just fucking
There's-
do it. You're not creepy. You're starting a very innocent conversation. Yes, some girls might get a little weirded out or annoyed. So what?
Mhm.
You walk away. It might keep replaying as a cringy scenario in your head. That's the worst thing that's ever going to happen. And that's where you
Yep.
meditate and you forget about it.
Absolutely. You wake up and you find it, you do another. I got probably blown out the worst I have in probably like a year this last week. And I was calling my friend Thomas. He's been on the channel before. He'll be on this week. We're going to have a podcast on death, actually, which is super. Evan, if you want to join, we have 3 of us. You're welcome to hop on too to
I'd
make
love
it
to.
work.
Yeah.
Cool. Dope. I'll send you the deets. Really cool guys. He does dating coaching as well. I messaged him. I'm, hey man, like look, like I got blown out for the first time in a long time. It was really bad. Like they gave me that look that like I was doing something wrong, and that's the look you'll get when you're starting. To be frank, that kind of
Yeah.
like almost fearful look. Like,
Because
dude,
you're
like,
awkward as fuck. You don't know what you're doing. You look like you kind of look weird because you're scared and you have fear, and you kind of have
yeah,
to get past that, and then you get more comfortable with
yeah,
it.
absolutely. And he's like, dude, that like it happens. Like, just that's a sign that the fact that it's happened like once in the last like about 6 months, like, dude, that's a good thing.
Oh
So,
yeah,
okay, so I guess kind of wrapping up the dating topic here, we'll definitely do a podcast, Evan, if you're down to do a dating spirituality podcast. I think that'd be really
100%.
cool.
I really love this, by the way. So yeah, I would
Hell yeah.
100% be down.
Hell yeah, dude. Finally someone like talks about dating spirituality. Like I've been looking for this for so long. Selfishly, I'll be
They're
honest.
either too like into the red pill toxic space, or they're just too much into spirituality where they don't date or something like that. So it's nice how we can kind of have this like down to earth blend.
Exactly, man. And I've talked to people in recovery too that are like, I couldn't apply the recovery principles to dating the women because
Mm,
it's too nice guy. It's too like we're equal, we're on, which we are spiritually equal, but that's a problem. They take that, and I did that too. I'm like, okay, treat women like, I'd be doing the program. It's like they're like, what the fuck? You got to have a little bit of that edge, like that little like fuck you kind of attitude,
Yeah.
to a degree. A little spiritual, being a bit of a spiritual dick. I don't know how to
You have
fucking
to
say
just not really care too much, and that's gonna come off
it.
as a little edgy, but it has to be genuine when you don't care. You can't try to not
Yep.
care. You have to just not really care about what happens, and you'll get there eventually. It takes a lot of time. Um,
Mm,
but yeah, like you said, the guy who doesn't care always succeeds, but not.
yeah.
It sounds like people might take that the wrong way, as if you're supposed to be like, I don't give a fuck about you. You're just not taking it so seriously. You're not caring too much about the outcome. You're just having a good time with whatever you're doing.
There it is, Evan. They don't care about the outcome.
Exactly.
That's the magic. They care about the moment because you're enjoying the conversation. Um, so yeah, basically, kind of to wrap up this little segment, dating can be a huge growth for your spirituality because you have to practice mindfulness. You have to practice facing yourself, your insecurities, and you have to be present in the moment when you're talking with a woman. Because as soon as you start going off into, and this isn't a bad thing if you're doing this, it's a process every man must go through as they're learning an approach. Like learning how to hone your mind when it starts going off, like, oh, I wonder what she's like in bed. Oh, I wonder if the date's gonna go well, and you haven't even like said 10 words to her. So really, it centered me so much. And seriously, guys, it's a superpower. A spiritual superpower is learning how to cold approach. Um,
Your mind will be your biggest downfall when it comes to approaching women, to talking to them, to
yes,
dating in general. Your mind will literally ruin all of it for you. So just this is where the meditation really comes into play. Even like all some of the biggest pickup artists. You are you familiar with RSD?
oh yeah, oh
They
yeah.
they even they recommend. I mean, they're not around anymore for obvious reasons, but even they recommended meditation. That was like one of their main things.
Okay. I imagine you felt it too. You experienced it where you had to become aware of that stuff. Like it was just like, poof,
Yeah,
you just had
100%.
to go through that.
You have to go through that. Dating is I would say it's almost necessary for us to really grow and evolve into the person that we're meant to be, because it
Amen, dude.
shines a light on your shadow and your darks, the dark aspects of yourself, your insecurities. It brings them all up.
Yeah, and we want to have relationships too. I think if you guys get a chance, watch some like of the guys that don't talk, like practice spirituality, and then go out and date. It's pretty bad. Like you can tell like they're not like they just it's just not great. But anyway, we can talk about it at a different time. So to wrap us up, we'll dive into a little bit of the social media because I think that kind of relates to dating actually, like how to be spiritual with social media. Because I know that oftentimes my biggest back and forth come on when I get like a girl's Instagram. I'm
Mm.
like, oh my, like it's like how to be present when it's like not you have like an infinite amount of time to decide something, but you know that it's gonna impact what's gonna happen or texting or whatever. How have you have navigated that yourself?
Do you mean like her seeing your social media or
More like, the communication of it because you're not present because you're sending a message and you're waiting for a response and they get
Ah,
it and they get it, but yet it
that
still
one
creates something.
that's a hard one. I
Okay.
still to this day struggle with like text anticipation, like say like are they
Yeah.
gonna answer? Like what do I say? I still struggle with that shit, bro. My advice would be if it's I don't know if this is good advice, but this is what I've learned. If it's that challenging for you, you have to think about it that much, it's probably maybe I mean, I don't want to say it's not meant to be, but in my opinion, it should all unfold very naturally and it shouldn't be you shouldn't have to wait 3 days for a text message. Like there should be good communication. Um, you won't even have to think too the only reason you're thinking too much about what to say is because you're afraid you're going to be judged. But with the right woman, I feel like she'll just it
Mm.
won't in the beginning, it'll always be a little bit of that,
Mhm.
but, I feel like it just kind of feels kinda right, for me anyway. Now it does, it
Okay.
feels really natural. Um, but yeah, I think that would probably be a topic, but I would have to think about that. It might be for a separate time.
Sure. Yeah, I think so too. I kind of like that. It's just natural. You don't feels effortless and yeah, man. Anyway, what I'm learning about myself at this moment is that when we start talking about dating, I get fired up. So I
There's
gotta
a lot
calm
to
down a little
talk
bit.
about. Yeah, man.
It
It's a
is.
good it's an interesting thing to talk about because there's just so much that goes into it.
Yeah. It's very rewarding too. I mean, every man, I'm sure the three of you watching right now are also men. Every man wants to date and to have relationships and to sleep with women and stuff. It's just part of our biology. Like, let's just be frank.
Mm,
And one of the biggest forms of suffering for me and why I turned to drugs and alcohol was because I didn't know how to do that. There wasn't YouTube videos at the time. My
mm.
parents did not teach me a Catholic background as well, just like you. So we're Catholic bros that found freedom. And it just caused so much suffering because I literally thought I was going to be alone forever. I
Yeah.
literally believed that. And I tried everything. Tried recovery groups, like any roundabout way. And finally, when I did, like, God's grace just gave me the right video at the right time, the right coach at the right time. I hired TripAdvice, if you know. He's pretty popular in the dating
Sounds
sphere.
familiar, yeah.
Yeah. He's one of like the OGs. Paid it $3,500 for coaching, which is not my coaching prices, by the way. So just so you guys know. And I opened a credit card, which I had just gotten out of debt, but I'm like, I need to do this. So you're not
Was it
alone
worth
out there.
was it
What's
good?
up?
Was it worth it?
It was worth it. Yep. He got me going.
Oh,
He
yeah, I
led me.
know this guy. I've seen him
Yeah,
before.
he's pretty common face in the sphere. He's starting. It's funny. He's just starting to get more into the red pill topics. I think he like was away from that for a while, and now he's just like. So it's interesting when a dating coach that's been around for like 10 years is starting to have his awakening, and you like can watch it through his videos.
Mhm.
So it's very cool. And what he did was he had me record my approaches. So what I would recommend to anyone out there, like he just said, have a little headset around you with your mic and go up and then listen back to all your it fucking sucked because I was like, but they weren't bad. And that's what I realized. I'm like, okay, I'm not that weird. I'm not that awkward. She's laughing. Her face might have said something different, but the tone of the voice really helped. So again, we'll dive into that another day. Really
I could talk
appreciate
about
everyone.
that for hours, by the
Yeah,
way. So the
seriously.
next time you wanna do a podcast, like, I have so much I could say, so much that goes into
Cool.
that.
We will spirituality and dating, absolutely. We'll call it the, I don't know, I was thinking like another pill name, like a spiritual pill, the spiritual pill. So we have T-Smash, a couple comments here. Therapy is actually the healing stages of an action that had taken place where it has effectively damaged your psyche and emotional trauma, and it affects your life. Well, for me, it is how I define it. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, man.
Yeah.
It is damage and it is healing. I think that's why they call it healing. It does damage the neural pathways and how things are wired, and then the emotional centers.
Mm.
So absolutely, brother. And there it is, and effects on spiritual behavior as well. Spiritual behavior
100%.
is it's a great way to put that. So anyway, man, Evan, wow, this has been extremely fun
I
and
loved it,
powerful
man.
podcast.
These
Good.
conversations are all what I live for. I can't have, like, basic normal conversations with people anymore, like small talk. I, like, need which there should ideally be a balance, but these deep conversations are, they mean a lot to me, so you learn a lot about yourself too, so I really appreciate you having me
Mm,
on. I really loved it.
you're welcome, man. And one little last dating tip: don't go deep with women right away; it'll turn them off. So keep it surface level and flirty with them. That's something I had to learn because I'd be like,
Yeah.
we'd be on date two. I'd be like, let me tell you about my trauma, and they'd be like, all right,
Exactly. You
not
wanna
this
keep
guy.
it very light. Yeah, 100%. That's
Yeah.
good advice.
So, hey, man, brother, great having you on. Great meeting you and getting to talk to you a little more about this. We'll definitely be doing more content, I hope, uh, as we
Definitely.
go further on this journey. Where can people connect with you and find your stuff?
Yeah, so I have Instagram, which is should I put it in the chat or,
Do
what's the
that. Yep. Yeah, I think that'd be best, and I'll add it as a comment so people can see it.
uh, that's my that's my Instagram. I think that's also my YouTube as well.
Okay. G plus YT. Evan as myself. Cool. And then what exactly do you like? What's your content based around, etc.?
So my Instagram and my YouTube content are a little different. My YouTube is mostly like men's kind of like healthy masculinity type stuff. Uh, I have a bunch of different things. Sometimes I talk about meditation, masculine and feminine energy.
Mhm.
Mostly kind of directed towards men because I started talking a lot about semen retention and stuff on there. So it kind of like obviously, developed a bit of a male following. And then Instagram, I have a big mix of women and men, and it's more mental health, spirituality, uh, inner healing, trauma, that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool. That's so sick, dude. And then you said you had a meditation you're leading a meditation coming up
Yeah.
soon. What's
So,
Can you get some details on that?
we'll put the link to that where you can sign up for that. I don't have it on me right now. We'll put the link for how
Okay,
you can sign up to that in the description or in the comments or something. But
cool.
yeah, it'll be 30-minute meditation. It's on April 28th at 12 p.m. Eastern time. I'm a meditation teacher. Well, I just got hired for one of my friends. She
Oh,
owns her own psychotherapy business.
let's
So
go.
she, by the good grace of God, hired me to teach meditations for the people. And this is going to be my first one. And we're doing it for free since it's my first time doing it. So
Congratulations, man. That's
thank you.
incredible. That's awesome. I'm going to be attending if I'm available then for sure. Would
Okay.
recommend you guys to as well. Very cool. For myself, as you guys know, Sobriety University, you're on the channel now. Um, yeah, if you're struggling with weed or any other addiction, weed mostly is what I help people with. But porn as well. That was a big one I had to get out of the way.
Mm.
Alcohol. I absolutely invite you to reach out, schedule a call with me. It's $20 for a 40-minute call, which is probably the price of a gram. And we're going to dive into your whole past, how weed has affected you, and then really what your goals are for the future and why you want to get sober, and then getting you going, man, because you can. Some of the guys on this channel you've seen, they've quit weed through the coaching, and it's not really the coaching, it's you guys doing it, right? It's all like, I'm just here to hold you accountable and give you some tidbits here and there that could help you out and make it easier for you. So if you're watching this, I'm sure that it maybe is on your mind or you've already done it. So definitely invite you guys to reach out to that. Otherwise, subscribe if you haven't. And we are at 111, which I think is a perfectly spiritual time to end. So thank you guys for tuning in. Evan, if you want to stay on for a couple minutes after, we can wrap up here,
Definitely.
debrief. And then, yeah, we'll catch you guys in the next one.